It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. The race against time to get aid to the people of Gaza as at least 60 people are killed in Israeli strikes. We hear from a hospital in Gaza and see evidence of severe malnutrition of children as the UN chief gives this warning.
All the aid authorized until now amounts to a teaspoon of aid when a flood of assistance is required.
Donald Trump escalates his trade war with punitive tariffs planned for the European Union and Apple. The ringleader behind the Paris robbery of Kim Kardashian 9 years ago is found guilty, along with 7 other people. 12 people are injured in a knife attack at a railway station in the German city of Hamburg. Plus, winning their Spurs, a North London welcome for Tottenham as they celebrate their Europa League triumph, their first trophy for 17 years. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. We start tonight with the growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Limited aid deliveries resumed this week, but the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres today said the amount being allowed into Gaza by Israel was, in his words, a teaspoon when a flood was needed. Hospitals in Gaza are struggling to cope, with new mothers unable to feed themselves or their babies. It comes as at least 60 people were killed by Israeli strikes in Gaza overnight. A warning that this report from our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, contains images of malnourished babies and children, which you may find distressing.
The Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza is barely standing. Inside, the wards are covered in the debris of airstrikes. It was one of the largest hospitals in northern Gaza. It is now in ruins. The streets and buildings nearby have been totally obliterated. The Israeli offensive, increasing in its intensity every day, has forced 4 major hospitals in Gaza to stop work over the past week, worsening an already desperate medical crisis. The Rantisi Hospital was a small clinic specialising in children's care, but now has to take patients from right across Gaza. They are overwhelmed.
Today we receive between 300 and 500 cases daily, with approximately 10% requiring admission. This volume of inpatient cases far exceeds the capacity of Rantisi Hospital, as the facility is not equipped to accommodate such large numbers.
The blockade has also created a massive shortage in baby formula. New mothers are struggling to breastfeed, unable to produce milk through a lack of food themselves, and then their babies don't get the vital nutrients they need. It is a lethal spiral. This is what Aya looked like shortly after she was born. She is now 3 months old and dangerously thin. Her skin stretches over her cheekbones and eye sockets, across her gaunt, pale face. Her nappy is too big for her emaciated little body.
My daughter was born at a normal weight, 3.5 kilograms, but as the war went on, she kept losing weight. My breast milk wasn't good enough. It gave her diarrhea. Formula, same thing. Her condition is serious. I don't want to lose her, because I lost my husband, and she's all I have left of him. I don't want to lose her. I just really want her to get treated. That's it.
The UN Secretary-General said today that no aid has reached the north of Gaza yet, and he has accused Israel of preventing essential items from getting in.
Strict quotas are being imposed on the goods we distribute, along with unnecessary delay procedures. Other essentials, including fuel, shelter, cooking gas, and water purification supplies, are prohibited.
Tens of thousands are now being driven to the south of Gaza. as the north becomes too dangerous. It has become a city of canvas, what remains of their lives and belongings, now in small tents pitched on stony ground.
We couldn't take all our belongings because of the Israeli army's presence, the constant airstrikes, the leaflets being dropped and the evacuation orders. The intensity of the bombardment forced us to flee. We couldn't even think about taking our food stores, let alone our mattresses.
This, according to government ministers, is Israel's strategy, to push the population into a small section of Gaza and then expect them to leave when life becomes unlivable. Benjamin Netanyahu now says that the war won't end until that is achieved. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
Now, yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu strongly criticised Keir Starmer, accusing him of emboldening Hamas after he called for a halt to Israel's military offensive in Gaza. That in the wake of 2 Israeli embassy staff being killed in Washington. The Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, gave her response this evening, in which she supported the criticism by Mr Netanyahu.
We just saw 2 Israeli workers at the Israeli embassy in the US killed. It's a very febrile time. And we've also seen who has been congratulating and thanking Keir Starmer. That's Hamas, that's a terrorist group that runs Gaza. Those are not the people who are on our side. What I'm really worried about is the additional actions which Keir Starmer had taken, breaking off trade talks. I don't think that was necessary. That's going to be to the detriment of the UK. Israel supplies us with, with medicines, with defense equipment. So to just scrap all that because of trying to send a message, I don't think that was the right way to send that message. So I'm not surprised that he's being criticised by Netanyahu.
Let's bring in our political correspondent, Rob Powell, now in Westminster. And Rob, is it surprising that Kemi Badenoch is being quite so supportive of the Israeli Prime Minister's comments?
I think it is and it isn't. Those comments from Benjamin Netanyahu were blistering, essentially accusing the UK, the US and Canada of siding with Hamas. So given that, you may have expected Kemi Badenoch to try and inject a bit of distance in there. That said, I think she has taken on and adopted a more pro-Israeli stance than maybe some of her predecessors have in that Tory leadership role. And she has mounted defences when others have been a little bit more concerned about what has been going on in Israel and Gaza. So whilst I think many Tories will agree with what she said in that clip, others may feel more uneasy. A Tory source has said tonight that Kemi Badenoch didn't say that she agreed with Benjamin Netanyahu. She simply said what she said, the source said. We haven't had anything from the Prime Minister or the top of government today on all of this. I don't think that's surprising. Sir Keir Starmer hasn't been reacting to comments or words from any world leaders in an attempt really to not get into a war of words and not provide any sort of running commentary. What we did have, though, is a more junior minister on air earlier today, essentially trying to decouple the criticism the UK has made of Israel's operations in Gaza and the aid flows going into Gaza with those awful scenes in Washington, D.C. 2 days ago of the 2 Israeli diplomats being shot, killed and murdered. I think there has been an attempt in the last day or so from the Israeli government to try and link the two and sort of suggest that criticism coming from the UK and allies was creating an environment where anti-Semitic violence like that was more likely. So the government really attempting to sort of pull those two together. Of course, there has been quite a big ramping up of criticism from the UK government towards Israel this week. You got a sense that it was the week the UK government sort of lost its temper with Israel. I think that, though, in the main is being motivated by some of the scenes that we are seeing coming from Gaza, including the harrowing ones that you saw in Alistair Bunkle's report just there. And you talk to some Labour MPs and they make the argument that Labour hasn't moved faster on this. And that's not just from left-wing pro-Palestinian MPs, it's from moderate MPs that worry that the Prime Minister is out of step with some of their voter base. So I think Sir Keir Starmer has been pretty cautious in how he's pitched his position when it comes to Israel, which probably makes you think that this latest move means that he felt compelled to act. I think it's also fair to say, though, that the words of Sir Keir Starmer or indeed Kemi Badenoch may not have that much impact on what Benjamin Netanyahu does next. And on that, I think for the bigger diplomatic influence and pressure, you look to the White House and Donald Trump.
Rob Powell, thank you. 8 people have been found guilty by a court in Paris of holding the celebrity Kim Kardashian at gunpoint and stealing $6 million worth of jewellery in a raid at her luxury apartment in the city in 2016. A warning that this report from our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer does contain flash photography from the very beginning.
It was a brazen robbery carried out against one of the biggest stars in the world. Almost 9 years after Kim Kardashian was robbed at gunpoint, members of a group dubbed the Grandpa Robbers were found guilty by a Paris court. From the days after the news of the heist broke through to the case coming to court, such as the star's fame that the trial attracted attention from around the world. When she came to give evidence to prevent a media scrum, she had to be let in a side entrance, ahead of harrowingly reliving a night where she was convinced she'd be raped and killed. She'd been in town for Paris Fashion Week, photographed at this Balenciaga show before she returned to this luxury penthouse where she was staying. At around 3 a.m, robbers dressed in police uniforms had forced this man, the hotel night watchman, at gunpoint to open the star's door and translate their demands, taking cash and millions of pounds worth of jewellery before binding Kim's hands and feet with zip ties and dumping her in the bathroom. The DNA they'd left behind helped prosecutors secure a conviction. Much has been made of this being a group of elderly thieves, but the media framing this as a mere group of grandpas didn't detract from the fear they inflicted. One of the men on trial, a lookout, had even sought to capitalise on who his victim was. Profits remain frozen on Eunice Abbas's memoir, I Kidnapped Kim Kardashian. For the reality star, this has been about closure. While some of those on trial claimed they didn't actually realise how famous their victim was, those convicted of holding her against her will now be jailed for the part they played in one of the most audacious heists against a celebrity in modern history. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Donald Trump has threatened an escalation in his tariff war with the European Union after claiming that there had been no progress in trade talks. He was asked about a planned 50% tariff on the trading bloc at the White House this evening.
What are you hoping to achieve with a 50% tariff on the...
Well, I think this is, there is no tariff, because what they'll do is they'll send their companies into the U.S. and build their plant.
You're looking for a deal in 9 days. Will you be able to do that, sir?
I'm not looking for a deal. I mean, we've set the deal. It's at 50%.
Is there anything the EU can do?
I don't know. We're going to see what happens. But right now it's going on June 1st. And that's the way it is. No, they haven't treated us properly. They haven't treated our country properly.
Well, this evening, the EU Trade Commissioner, Maroš Šefčovič, posted on social media saying that he'd spoken to Trump officials and insisted that EU-US trade must be guided by mutual respect, not threats, adding, "We stand ready to defend our interests." Well, our correspondent Ashish Joshi joins us live now from Washington. Ashish, Mr. Trump talking tough as is often his wont, and not just on the EU, Apple also in his sights.
Yes, that's right. Two big trade missions for Donald Trump. We got up this morning, put out a post on his social media, lit a fire under the dialogue, the negotiations that were taking place between the US and EU trade officials. He knew exactly what he was doing, and that was the timing. He's really frustrated at the delays in being able to negotiate with the EU. This started back in April, a month ago, when he was talking about Liberation Day, resetting trade agreements with the rest of the world. He's had the EU in his sights for some time, and you could hear from his language, he said it's been set up to win a trade war against the United States. He's always believed that the European Union has an unfair advantage. It certainly exports more to the US than it imports. He sees that as a trade imbalance. And what he said there, well, I'm not looking for a deal, it's been set at 50%. That isn't exactly true. He is looking for a deal. It was at 20% in April. It was then negotiated down to 10%, the tariff. And now they are locked in talks, trying to get the best deal for each party, each bloc. And also his frustration spilling out with Tim Cook, the boss of Apple phones. He's told Tim Cook that we are going to slap a 25% tariff on all Apple phones unless you begin to build them here in the United States. Tim Cook has so far not responded to that threat. He builds his phones in China, and now he's moving some of those plants to India. He will continue to build those plants in India, but recognizing that if these tariffs do come in and his phones are hit with 25% tax, then he's going to have to pass that on to Americans. And that is really the rub in all of this. Donald Trump asked by reporters today, why are you going after an American company? Why are you going after American consumers? And Donald Trump simply replied, because I want these phones to be built here. So he's looking at jobs for Americans, but certainly not looking at how the rising costs will impact the same voters.
Indeed. Ashish, thank you. Well, let's stay with Donald Trump. And a judge in the United States has blocked the Trump administration from banning the enrolment of foreign students at Harvard University. It follows months of wrangling between the White House and the Ivy League university. Harvard had called the ban a blatant violation of the First Amendment and an unconstitutional retaliation for defying the White House's political demands. Russia and Ukraine today carried out a prisoner swap, with each releasing 390 prisoners. More swaps are expected over the course of the weekend. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov today said that Russia was ready to give Ukraine a draft document outlining a peace plan once the prisoner exchanges are completed. A woman has been arrested after 12 people were reportedly injured, 6 seriously, in a stabbing at Hamburg's central train station in Germany. An attacker targeted people on the platform, according to police, who said that the suspect was a 39-year-old woman. Officers believe she acted alone, and investigations into the attack are continuing. A coroner has ruled that a deaf TikTok star died because of a failure by mental health services. 25-year-old Imogen Nunn died by suicide on New Year's Day in 2023, having struggled with her mental health since she was 16. A warning: the following report by Sadia Chowdhury contains references to suicide.
In life, she'd highlighted the lack of services for deaf people. Now an inquest into her death has backed her campaign. Imogen Nunn, who was born deaf, was 25 when she took her own life. In an interview after her death, Imogen's mother told Sky News of the struggles her daughter had faced trying to access mental health services.
I know she reached out for help 2 days before she took her life. She wrote a text to her mental health worker saying, I'm having the worst few months, I'm struggling, I really need to go back into hospital again, and I need BSL. I need it to be supported with BSL.
Happy Pride Month! BSL stands for British Sign Language. A lack of BSL interpreters is one of the biggest reasons for health disparities experienced by deaf people in Britain. Even the inquest into Imogen's death had to be adjourned for 2 months because no BSL interpreters were available to translate for witnesses. The inquest concluded that Imi was failed in a number of ways by mental health services. The coroner underlined a backdrop of systemic challenges with a number of BSL interpreters across various UK industries.
When people can't access communication support that they need, such as a British Sign Language interpreter, it means that people aren't able to access health services properly. That might mean that they don't understand when they are dying, that people don't understand how to take their medication. We've got cases where we've seen people have had a miscarriage and haven't realised until they've gone home that that's what's happened. And we know that about a quarter of people who are deaf or have hearing loss have actually put off booking an ambulance when they need one because they don't feel that that will be accessible to them.
She tried so hard. She really tried so hard. She supported everyone. You know, TikTok was about helping other people, reaching out. Imi had found that strength after so many years that if you reach out and ask for help, you'll be helped. Well, they didn't help her.
Sussex Partnership NHS Foundation Trust said, "We are sorry that we did not deliver consistent quality care to IMI. Our care planning, management of risk and communication with other NHS organisations should have been better. Since IMI's death, we have improved how we audit the quality of documentation, including care plans and risk assessments. We are introducing a new electronic patient record system, which will improve our ability to share information with other NHS partners." IMI's family have welcomed the coroner's findings and say the concerned agencies have vital lessons to learn. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News.
And if you've been affected by that story, you can contact the Samaritans at any time on 116 123 or email joe@samaritans.org. The government has claimed that there has been a massive increase in NHS appointments, but data seen by Sky News tells a different story. We can exclusively reveal that the Labour Party has actually overseen a smaller rise than the Conservatives in the same timeframe. Polling also shows that 4 in 10 think the NHS has got worse in the last 12 months. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has this report.
Labour's promise on the NHS, the centrepiece of its offer to the country.
So what we've set out in our manifesto is the first step, which is the down payment on the change that we need, and that is the 40,000 appointments each and every week to reduce the waiting list. That would be 2 million a year.
A massive cash injection for the NHS in November's budget. And now, since February, the government arguing appointments are one of their biggest success stories.
I said that we would get 2 million extra appointments done in the first year of the government. And I'm really pleased that we've done that, we've hit the target, and we've done it with 7 months to spare. I do acknowledge it's the foothills, there's lots more to do.
We said we'd deliver 2 million more appointments in the first year. We've delivered early, a lot done, a hell of a lot more to do.
But are things really getting that much better? Surely that should be easy to tell. That's exactly what this man tried to do. It was harder than he thought.
We didn't know how they were defining these appointments. We didn't know, when they said that there would be more of them, what they meant there would be more than. They weren't clear about that.
Even when this government hit the target, this man did not feel he had enough information to make sense of it.
We couldn't see whether that was a big number because we couldn't compare it with the data from the past for the same kinds of appointments. And we asked them for that information. They didn't publish it. We didn't have it. The only way we could get hold of it was by submitting an FOI request, which they had to answer. And when that came back about a month later, it was fascinating. We learned that this year's increase in this type of appointments was not really anything special.
Labour loves to claim it is fixing the NHS. But what does the data we got from NHS England actually show us? Right, let's look at this. This is the number of NHS appointments in England in 1 year, just shy of 70 million. And at the election, Keir Starmer promised an extra 2 million on top. So you see, not a huge proportion given how many there are. Now, 2 million more appointments requires a rise of 2.85%. And in February, 7 months after Labour came to power, the Prime Minister announced that they'd beaten that record. And actually, they did it by rather a lot. But here's the thing. With the Freedom of Information data that we got, we can see that the increase in appointments was actually higher in the previous year, when Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister, and the year before that, when the Tories were in power as well. In fact, if you look at this, appointments have been broadly rising at the same steady rate for years. Now, the Department for Health doesn't dispute our claims, and they blame a fiscal black hole. And they talk about the 3.6 million additional appointments that have taken place. Now, they also say that waiting lists are down, falling 6 consecutive months in a row.
This former Health Secretary and Chancellor is scathing.
What these numbers seem to show is actually the rate of appointments was going up by more under the last government than it is under this government. That's really disappointing when you look at the crisis in the NHS. All the evidence is that if you want to increase the number of people being treated, you need more capacity in the system and the doctors and nurses that are there to be working more productively. Instead, what we've had from this government is the vast majority of extra funding for the NHS has gone into pay rises without asking for productivity in return. Unless that is changed, we are just not going to make progress in terms of bringing down those waiting times.
6 out of 10 people told Sky News they did not trust the Prime Minister on the NHS. If they hear claims of improvement but don't feel things are getting better, could that make things worse? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
A new life-size statue of the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin has appeared in Moscow, and not everyone's happy about it. Human rights activists in Russia say it's wrong to commemorate the man responsible for the deaths of millions of innocent people. Our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett reports.
In a Moscow metro station, a new monument to a monster. Joseph Stalin is back. From some, there are flowers, but from others, fury at this apparent rehabilitation of a tyrant.
What were they thinking? They don't even know history. How many died under his leadership? And suddenly he appears here, this bloodsucker.
This is the right decision, I think, if it was here before. This is the history of our state.
But it's a history that saw millions die from purges, famines and forced labour. No mention of that here. Instead, he's portrayed as a leader loved by his people, replicating a sculpture that disappeared after his death.
Like most statues of Stalin, the original was removed during the period of de-Stalinisation to destroy his personality cult. But under Vladimir Putin, Stalin has gradually started to reappear. Until now, it was mostly on a small scale, well outside Moscow. Something this big and this central is unprecedented.
There are signs of a trend. Last month, Volgograd Airport became Stalingrad Airport. And last year, Moscow's Gulag History Museum about Stalin's prison camps was closed for apparent fire safety violations. Yan Rachinsky is a human rights activist who works to expose Stalin's crimes.
For the current government, the main thing is the state. The state is sacred. The state is above everything. The state is infallible. That is why criticism of Stalin is constantly decreasing. Everything that prevents us from being proud of our history is fading into the shadows.
And that's what's happening to these plaques. Activists put them on buildings to show where Stalin's victims last lived. But they're increasingly being removed.
In the last few years, it's been like a hurricane. The people from this office took this plaque down themselves. We noticed it and wrote to them. They say they considered it inappropriate.
Historical horrors that are being kept out of sight, and for many, out of mind. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Spurs fans have flooded North London to watch their team parade the Europa League trophy, claimed after their 1-0 victory over Manchester United in Bilbao on Wednesday. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris was there and sent this report.
How long they've waited for this, to toast a title at Tottenham again. 41 years since their last European trophy, 17 years for a trophy of any kind. They don't have much to celebrate usually around here. No wonder every corner of the high road was filled. Every vantage point taken, however precarious.
You can really feel here what ending a trophy drought means to a club, a fan base and a community that's been starved of success for so long. And what's even more surprising, perhaps, is that the Europa League has been won while Tottenham have been enjoying their worst domestic season in 5 decades. But none of that's on the mind tonight. It's all about celebrating.
2 days on, players and fans still savouring the sweetness of beating Manchester United.
We have actually lifted a major trophy, European trophy, for the first time in 41 years.
Last time Spurs won a European trophy, I was 3 years old.
Just mental. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Back from Bilbao, it was on to the buses. Party moving into parade mode. Captain Son Heung-min revealing he's had just 5 hours sleep in 2 days.
I dreamed it this moment and finally happened, you know. A little bit of pressure is going away. So, but I'm so glad that I did it here. I did it with Spurs shirts.
More than 100,000 supporters are estimated to have squeezed into these streets to see their homecoming heroes. A double dose of celebrations for Brennan Johnson. The score of the only goal in the final, 24 today. He's never had a bigger party. And so many doubted if this day would ever come again to Spurs, especially with this manager.
I told him and I didn't believe. But here we are.
Tottenham have secured more than silverware, a promotion too into the Champions League. One of a record 6 English teams next season contesting Europe's most prestigious and lucrative competition. When Spurs reached that final and lost in 2019, it was just the latest miserable chapter for fans.
Did you ever question whether this trophy would come again?
No, it's always coming, second season. Come on.
The Tottenham Trophy cabinet finally has a new addition and renewed belief it won't be so long until they're parading and partying here again. Now the winning feeling is back. Rob Harris, Sky News, Tottenham.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and the Daily Mirror columnist, Susie Boniface. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Financial Times. Its headline, Trump threatens EU tariffs of 50%. We'll be right back with that story and others. Do stay with us.